Good evening. As you lie still beneath your warm blankets, eyes gently closed, and your breathing soft and slow, let me tell you a gentle story from a time long ago. A story of unrequited love, of the sun, the river, and a girl who only wished to be free. Once upon a time, when gods and magical creatures still walked the earth, there was a radiant god named Apollo, the bringer of light and the golden sun. Each morning, Apollo rose into the sky in his blazing chariot, lighting up the world with warmth and energy, waking forests, flowers, and creatures from their slumber. One day, as he gazed down at the earth, his eyes were caught by a glimmer on the surface of a river. Not sunlight, but something else, someone else. Her name was Daphne, a river nymph, a daughter of flowing waters, who danced through the forests and streams, her hair like woven sunlight, her laughter like the river's song. From the moment Apollo saw her, his heart was caught like a bird in a net. He loved her instantly, with all the heat and passion of the midday sun. But Daphne did not wish to be loved. She belonged to the river, to the trees, to the quiet and the calm. She admired Diana, the moon goddess, and like her, Daphne had vowed never to marry, never to belong to anyone. Still, Apollo tried to win her heart. He called to her from the sky, offered her his golden chariot, his love, his fire. But Daphne only turned away, returning to her streams, her solitude, her silence. At last, Apollo asked for help from Eros, the god of desire. But Eros, annoyed by Apollo's arrogance, played a trick. He shot Apollo with a golden arrow, filling him with burning love. Then he shot Daphne with a leaden one, making her heart flee from love like the wind from fire. And so Apollo chased her through the woods, calling her name, pleading for her to stop. But Daphne ran faster and faster, her feet flying over moss and stone, her heart pounding like a wild drum. She reached the riverbank and cried out to her father, the river god, to save her. Hearing her plea, he did what only a god could do. He changed her. As Apollo reached for her, her skin turned to bark, her arms to branches, her flowing hair to a crown of leaves. Daphne became a laurel tree, rooted forever in the earth, untouched and unclaimed. Apollo, stricken with sorrow, stood before her in silence. He could not hold her, could not love her, but he could honor her. And so he made the laurel sacred, a tree of poets and victors, a memory of love that could never be returned. And now, as you drift into sleep, let your breath move softly like the river, and your dreams carry you to a land where even the gods can learn that sometimes true love is letting go many moons past. And Apollo never forgot the nymph who became a tree. Every morning, as he drove his golden chariot across the sky, his eyes would wander to the grove where Daphne now stood, her branches swaying gently in the morning breeze, her leaves catching his light with quiet grace. He no longer chased, no longer called. He only watched, in reverence and quiet longing. The laurel tree grew strong, her roots drinking from the river she once danced along, her leaves shimmering like whispers of memory. Apollo would visit her in silence, placing crowns of laurel upon poets and heroes, honoring her spirit through every victory. Yet the gods are not immune to change, and time, even for immortals, carries its own lessons. Seasons passed, and a quiet understanding grew in Apollo's heart. Love, he realized, was not about possessing, but about cherishing, even from afar. And so the god of the sun began to speak to Daphne not with words, but with light. He sent the softest rays to warm her bark in winter, golden beams that filtered gently through her leaves in spring. And Daphne, though she could not speak, began to bloom in response. Tiny white blossoms, delicate as snowflakes, would emerge on her branches each year as if to say, "I remember you." The other gods watched with quiet awe, for even they saw how time had softened Apollo's fire into something gentler, a love rooted not in desire, but in devotion. And in this way, god and tree, sun and river, remained together not through touch, but through presence. Now, as you rest beneath your own blankets, imagine a grove kissed by sunlight, a breeze carrying the scent of laurel, and the quiet rustle of leaves that once belonged to a girl who loved her freedom more than anything. In the silence of nature, love still lives, quiet, steady, and eternal. And so the years passed, as softly as petals falling in the wind, and Apollo continued his quiet devotion. But far beyond the sky and grove, something began to stir, for even among the stars, the story of the sun god and the laurel tree had taken root. The moon goddess, Diana, who once inspired Daphne's vow of freedom, watched from her silvery throne above. She had always walked her own path, untouched and alone, her heart bound to the quiet night. Yet when she looked upon Apollo, no longer proud and burning, but patient and kind, she felt a stirring in her own heart, not of love, but of understanding. One evening, when the sky was bathed in twilight and the earth rested in golden stillness, Diana descended from the moon and stood before the laurel tree. Her silver eyes glowed like stars, and in the hush of the grove, she whispered to Daphne's leaves, "You were always free, little one. And now, even in stillness, you are remembered, honored, and loved in a way that asks nothing of you." Then she turned to Apollo, who stood nearby, his head bowed, and for the first time in countless ages, the goddess of the moon and the god of the sun stood together, not as opposites, but as companions of light and shadow. Diana did not offer comfort, and Apollo did not ask for it. They simply stood in silence beside the tree, where the wind carried Daphne's name like a lullaby. And from that night forward, something changed in the skies. When the sun set and Apollo's chariot dipped below the edge of the world, Diana's moon would rise gently after, casting soft silver light on the laurel tree below. And in the hush between day and night, just for a moment, both sun and moon would shine together, touching the leaves of Daphne's tree in quiet harmony. It is said that if you walk through a laurel grove at dusk and listen very closely, you may still hear her laughter riding on the wind, or feel the warmth of a god who learned how to love without holding on. And now, dear listener, let your own breath rise and fall like the tide of ancient time, your dreams drifting gently between light and shadow, where love, in its truest form, never ends. Seasons turned like pages in a forgotten book, and the world below changed as mortals came and went, building temples, telling stories, and lighting fires beneath the stars. But deep in the sacred grove where Daphne's laurel tree stood, time moved more slowly, as if held in the hush between heartbeats. Apollo still visited her, his love no longer ablaze but steady as the sunrise, and though Daphne remained rooted in bark and branch, her spirit danced freely in the ripples of her river, in the hush of the wind, in the soft rustling of leaves that whispered to the skies. One quiet morning, when the dew still clung to the grass and the sky was brushed with the pale pink of dawn, a young mortal wandered into the grove, a poet, lost in thought, searching not for love, but for truth. He sat beside the tree and opened a worn scroll, ready to write, but no words came. In his silence, he felt something else instead. The warmth of the sun on his back, the cool breeze brushing his cheeks, the scent of laurel in the air. And then, a voice inside him as soft as a breath. Let the world be enough. He did not know it, but Daphne's spirit had touched his heart. That day, he wrote a poem unlike any other, one that spoke of love without asking, of beauty without owning, of devotion without demand. Word of the poem spread far and wide, and soon many came to the grove not to disturb, but to sit in stillness beneath the branches, to listen, to feel, to remember. Apollo watched all of this in quiet wonder, his heart no longer aching but filled with something deeper, a peace that can only come when love has learned to let go. From then on, the laurel tree was no longer just a symbol of victory, but of patience, resilience, and silent strength. And so it remains, growing still, its leaves catching sunlight by day and silver beams by night, bridging two worlds, of gods and mortals, longing and peace. If ever you pass a laurel tree and feel suddenly calm, suddenly understood, perhaps it is Daphne, brushing her spirit gently against yours. Now close your eyes, let the sounds of the world drift away, and imagine that grove where sunlight and moonlight meet, where the heart does not chase, but simply rests. Many ages passed, and the old stories turned to myth, then to memory, and finally to dreams. But the laurel tree remained, standing tall and graceful, its roots deep in sacred earth, its leaves eternally green. The gods grew quieter as mortals filled the world with their own noise and wonder, yet in hidden places, in moonlit forests and still riverbanks, the ancient magic breathed on. One twilight, when the sky was awash in gold and violet, the breeze that stirred the laurel leaves brought with it a soft whisper, a voice older than time. All love leaves a mark. It was Daphne, her spirit now woven into the very rhythm of nature, in the hush of dusk, in the lull of waves, in the pause between lightning and thunder. Apollo heard it too, and though he no longer wept for what was lost, he smiled for what remained, a love that transformed, that endured without possession, that healed in silence. Inspired, he fashioned a constellation from stars scattered across the heavens, shaping them into the outline of a tree. Roots deep, branches reaching, so that even in the darkest night, Daphne would shine above, immortal in light. The mortals who noticed this cluster of stars did not know her name, but they felt its quiet beauty, a strange sense of peace whenever they gazed upon it. Over time, they called it the Watcher, unaware that it watched because it loved. And thus, Daphne lived on, not in sorrow, not in solitude, but as part of the very balance between the earth and sky. Some say that when a soul truly understands unspoken love, when they let go of what cannot be and find grace in what is, the laurel leaves shimmer just a little brighter, and a warmth brushes the skin, like sunlight gently passing through trees. That is when you know the story never ended. It lives in you now, in every quiet breath, in every gentle goodbye, in every moment you choose peace over longing. So rest now, dear listener, with the stars above you and the roots of an old story below. Let your dreams be soft, your heart be light, and know that you, too, are part of this endless tale of love, of letting go, and of becoming something beautiful. And now, as the centuries turn quietly like ripples on a still pond, the story of Daphne and Apollo slips gently from the mouths of bards to the silent spaces between dreams. Few remember their names, but their legacy lives on in places where time slows, in the hush of a forest clearing, the soft light falling through leaves, or the gentle swirl of a stream that curves without asking why. It is said that once every 100 years, under the light of a full moon and when the wind carries no weight, Apollo returns to the grove where Daphne stands. He comes not in grandeur, nor in pursuit, but as light itself, soft and golden, warm and still. And as he stands beside the laurel tree, he no longer asks for her heart or her hand. Instead, he offers something else, a song, played not on instruments of the gods, but on the strings of memory. His music drifts through the branches and lingers in the air like a promise kept. Daphne, in her rooted form, listens, and though she does not speak, her leaves rustle in reply, not in sorrow, but in quiet understanding. For theirs is no longer a tale of unfulfilled love, but of how love can change, soften, and settle like dusk over the hills. And so, once more, their story reminds us that not all love needs to be returned to be real, not all endings must be mourned, and not all longing leads to despair. Sometimes, love finds its truest form not in possession, but in presence, in simply being there, again and again, with no demand, no condition, just light beside shade, and shade beside light. And if you listen closely, in the quiet moments before sleep, you might hear the faint notes of Apollo's song, drifting down from the stars, brushing gently through the leaves outside your window, reminding you that love, in its gentlest form, is always near. So close your eyes now, let your thoughts drift like petals on a stream, and feel the story settle softly around you. A story of trees and gods, of patience and peace, and the beauty that lives forever in stillness. And so we arrive at the end, though in truth, stories like this one never truly end. They simply become quieter, like a candle flickering low before the dawn. The tale of Daphne and Apollo, once fierce with longing and resistance, has softened into something timeless, a quiet thread woven through the fabric of nature itself. The laurel still stands, not just as a tree, but as a symbol of grace, of strength without force, of beauty that asks for nothing. Its leaves whisper ancient truths to those who are still enough to hear them. They remind us that even the brightest flame, if untamed, can cast long shadows, but when held with care, that same light warms and guides. And Apollo, the once youthful god of pursuit, has changed too. With the passing of ages, his desire no longer burns with heat, but glows with reverence. He returns to Daphne not to chase, but to be near, as a presence, as a guardian, as the light that gently filters through her branches each morning. The world turns, seasons pass, and the stars shift slowly above, but their quiet bond remains, untouched by time. And in the hearts of those who feel deeply, who love silently, and let go gently, a part of this tale lives on. So now, dear listener, let your breath slow, your thoughts settle like leaves on water, and your spirit rest in the knowledge that all love, whether fulfilled or unreturned, finds its place. In memory, in transformation, in peace, the sun will rise again, and the laurel will shimmer in its light. But for now, you may close your eyes and let the story fade like mist in the morning. You are safe, you are still, and you are part of something far older and more beautiful than you know. Sleep well, and let your dreams grow roots. Good night.